I'm Zeynep.
Yes. Yes, I am the editor, and Zeynep is the director of the film. And I guess we will briefly talk a little bit about the film, and we're also curious to know if there are questions. We would be quite excited to answer them. And so it will be like a conversation. So maybe first, Zeynep, maybe you want to talk a little bit about how this project came about and what drove you also to making this.
Thank you, all of you, for being here, for watching the film, and also to Apartment Project and Chromatic Wednesdays, to Selda and Emre and Melih, who invited us. Thanks a lot, and for this opportunity to be able to talk about the film again. It's been a while. It's been 2 years since the film is out. And it has traveled a little bit, but because it happened during the pandemic, we had a lot of Q&As, but they were mostly through Zoom. So it's really nice to be here all together, face to face. Eytan and I actually date back as colleagues. Maybe we know each other for 15 years, and we have collaborated in different projects. But this film is special for us because also it kind of marked our departure from Turkey. So because like the Chromatic Wednesdays for this particular week is focused on the theme of home. So it's kind of our farewell to home. In that sense, that was interesting to gather all these image and sound like bits from Istanbul, kind of put them in a luggage and kind of bring them here with our first probably couple of bags, and immediately we started working on the film. But to briefly answer Eytan's question about the origins of the film, the initial idea, it owes a lot to the Ottoman historian Cemal Kafadar, an amazing scholar, intellectual friend that we both know for years. And one day he brought me this book and told me that this would make a great film. And it's a book written by this, again, a great intellectual like Cemal Kafadar himself from the 17th century this time. Komurciyan started writing his book in 1661, and it took him quite a while. Like he completed in 30 years actually. And it's a very tiny book, really like 50 pages. And then what we did was kind of try to understand his love and passion for the city, actually, also as an Armenian Ottoman citizen back then, kind of having this vision of looking at Istanbul from outside, from its waters, and try to kind of also use it as a fantasy space for himself, because he always says that I look behind the walls, like from the water, but then it's as if he has this, the special eye, almost as a camera movement, that he would just like, zoom into the city, or like kind of really as if he has a camera at hand. The original idea really came with this notion of maybe mimicking his impossible camera from the 17th century. Like what kind of a visionary is he, that he would have this style of writing in 1661. And like, what if we try to imitate his narration in the filmic sphere? Yeah, we just started kind of traveling the exact route that he wrote about in his book, and it took me some like maybe around like 9 months to finish shooting. Yeah, and then Eytan came in. So how was it for you to kind of How did you join the project?
Yeah, it was at a very specific time in our lives, as Zeynep said. And thanks for the introduction that I missed, so thank you for hosting us. Yeah, I just moved to Berlin at that time, and so it was a bit like leaving Istanbul behind. So that was definitely something that I wanted to do, something like that, just kind of to face emotionally also. And for me, actually, I'm not like a very good, it's kind of funny thing, I'm not very good with orientation or all these historical facts. It's not that story yet. So I was thinking, you know, also as I was watching it, all this information and all of these, it's a very dense film. And in the end, I think what really attracted me also to the project, among a few things, was the fact that it was very, it has a meditative aspect to it, even when it's like giving you all this information, which you probably, if you are new or even if, I don't know, there's a lot of information to process, lots of place to process. And also it's not kind of a minimalist film, let's say. It has a lot of different ideas in the same kind of cinematic universe, I don't know. So yeah, I actually, when I was watching it also now a little bit, we came towards the middle, it's really, I focus in and out of the film, which is yeah, in the editing, I think I was thinking the biggest challenge, and as I was watching, I remembered it as well, is which points we allow the audience to be in this kind of meditative mood, to kind of let the things that have been told sink, and also the mind continuing that work of putting the voice from the past over the present images. And I want to ask, maybe, how did you come to the idea of, you know, putting something from the past over the present with this voiceover? Or did you, when you were kind of making putting the project together, was there like other options that you were considering, or it was immediately this should be the adaptation of the book?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it short. I know, like, there was a lot of talking, so I'll try to wrap it up. I think I was really interested in this kind of multiple perspectives, also, like in terms of the narrator. You know, not like not this like one voiceover that kind of guides us, but also as if we really like go on this journey and like meet people, ask one question to this person, ask another one to the next, and kind of invite their voices as well. So it's kind of this multifocal, in a way, like narration was something I had in mind from the very early stages on. But at the same time, I think I developed a certain type of camaraderie with Komurciyan himself. So, of course, like certain things found like their shape throughout in the process. But as much as I wanted him to tell us the story from the 17th century, I also wanted to tell him what happened after he died. You know, it's like a, you know, so we go to this particular location he's talking about, and then, you know, he talks about like what that location was in his time with all its layers. And then I also like kind of wanted to add to his narration, okay, after you passed, you know, there was this new kind of park, and then they built a cemetery, or like they built this and that. So it's like a constant conversation I had in my head with him kind of still continues, which is a little awkward. But yeah, that's why it was not necessarily about the geography of Istanbul, even though the film is very kind of straightforward about that. We decided with Eytan at a point that, you know, we don't want any maps. We don't want to, you know, we're not interested in like kind of guiding people in terms of the geography of the city. We just like want to make sure that it's a water city. It's surrounded by these different types of water, you know, like lakes or like rivers, Bosphorus itself, like so the sea. So how do we really revive the image of Istanbul as a water city? So, and then on, it just like I think brought its own solutions in a way. But maybe should we open it to you so that we do a more interactive talk?
I mean, I was thinking also that, you know, as the film, let's say, you know, as time passes, you know, this film in itself is also like a time that's kind of gone now, that mosque is now finished, that the cultural center is open now. Yeah, in a way, I think it's also looking at things and seeing their history or there's things that have disappeared, but you know that when you look at something and you know it's I don't know. For example, I left Istanbul, for example, and when our home, our apartment had to be destroyed because of the they had to destroy because it was
renewal
project,
project.
it was a renewal project. So they were going to destroy it. And so now, for example, when I go there, you know, for me, it's not just that, you know, this new apartment. I look at the new apartment and I still see my own apartment there as if it's still there. So I think, there's a kind of an added layer to the film now, I think, which is interesting for me. So I wanted to add that.
Several questions, but maybe for the chapters, are they transferred from the book, or did you find a new structure with the chapters? This would be one question, and also, I'm not speaking Turkish, so for me it was interesting to follow. In the beginning, I heard this is kind of ancient Turkish, probably, and then I realized, okay, but this is a dialogue, and this is probably contemporary. So, but these levels kind of melted into each other. My experiences, and I would be also interested in if I forgot the name. Who wrote the travelogue? Was he from Istanbul, or was he kind of a tourist also? Yeah, these two questions.
So I'll start from the last one. Komurciyan himself, he was from Istanbul. He was born and raised in Istanbul, like a member of this Armenian family. Also, most of his family was like in quite high places in the church. And he was expected to be also like a priest, but he didn't want that. But still he dedicated this book to a higher priest, an Armenian priest. So he had this kind of mixed relationship also like towards his own community as an Armenian intellectual who was expected to be a part of the church. So he was also interestingly secular figure like at his time. And that's why he knew a lot about Istanbul, also like I think through his family. That was a beat. So he was not a traveler in that sense, but he has like these really strange tiny books like about, you know, like the the famous fires of Istanbul, or like this kind of, he really liked, making these lists, and like he wrote about, he made inventories basically almost about everything in everyday life. So he was a very, very interesting figure. He also actually, I don't know where it's exhibited. It was like a part of an exhibition at the Metropolitan Museum. He drew like a kind of a world map. Also, it was like the 17th century, the time of the geographic kind of inventions, and like people were really interested in maps and like kind of, I think, describing their own like cities. So I could also see that he was like connected in that sense to the outside world, so that he knew the trends in a way, like in the world. I'm assuming that probably like the first time the world maps were shown to the like Ottoman Sultan around the same time. So it's really, I think he belongs to a larger like a visual, like history of visual culture, which I also find very interesting. In terms of the chapters, his book is written in 7 chapters, but they don't have names, and we haven't necessarily like stuck with like the actual chapters themselves. Well, we try to like locate certain themes around certain locations, and then like that's how we try to in a way conceptualize a particular chapter, right? Would that be an accurate?
Yes.
Yeah, we also try to work on a map, but maybe now you can tell the funny story.
This is kind of an embarrassing story that, because Zeynep of course studied the book and she knows all the route and everything, and I was at one point really confused about the, even though we're not trying to really like be, like a map and guide the audience by the hand, etc. But as an editor, I kind of was trying to follow her. And then at one point I was confused, and I'd like try to draw a map of Istanbul just to understand. And my drawing actually, I don't know why I did that, but it closed the Bosphorus. So as if the Bosphorus doesn't cross to the.
So like he was able to reach the Black Sea, and then it was kind of like he literally drew a
and then
line.
she was like, is this the right person to edit the film with? But yeah, anyway, this is kind of like we keep telling this story because it's quite incredible.
Yeah, it was a funny moment for us. In terms of the language, I'm really happy to hear that it kind of communicates with the audience, even though even though you don't speak Turkish, you were able to hear the differences also in how the language shape was changing with different narrators. Thank you.
I mean, first of all, I want to say love, love, love. I love the film. I mean, I didn't spend a big portion of my life. I spent only 4 years of it in Istanbul. But I mean, it's always a very difficult thing because once you live there, you develop some sort of sense of attachment. I thought about the film in terms of intervention a lot, because you are taking a material and you're actually intervening with the material. You are not trying to make it historical in a conventional sense. You are not trying to create that kind of an imagery. You are actually like intervening with the present moment using a material from the past. You are intervening with the commentaries and the people that are appearing in the film. What I really want to ask about is this, the use of this yellow jacket as the narrative element, as an intervention in the story, like, and the use of projection on their bodies, like, because I also really thought about it, because you're also changing the aspect ratio in some scenes. You are introducing some kind of a fictional sub-narratives, and they were distracting me, but I'm also thinking about it as just, it's almost kind of like giving you a feeling of like a fact and fiction, like this kind of a pendulum. So I would really like to hear your opinion or your take on this kind of a intervention, I would say, like a narrative intervention, if it's possible for you to say a couple things about it. Thank you.
In terms of the fiction kind of hybrid parts, actually it was also again inspired by the original text, because although I kind of talked about him as an inventory writer, he was a very interesting I think figure, because he would start like naming these very concrete things. There are 2 walls here, there are 3 doors there, and then all of a sudden, like the next thing would be, and then there was this guy coming from this family, like this really elaborate story about a sweet seller, like a kind of like a street seller, and and then you would forget about the story immediately. So I was like, I kind of was inspired to do a similar thing with the flow. Because I really loved, like, when I was reading his books, like this kind of a flow, also that I tried to, in a way, reenact through the camera work. So, like, that kind of narrative storytelling was coming from him, actually. Although I wouldn't necessarily, like, name his, like, as a narrative, still, it was different from like just writing inventory. So that was very inspiring in that sense. And of course it kind of fits with this idea of multiple narrators, multiple perspectives. Yeah, that's why I wanted to a little bit like differentiate them from the actual like flow of the camera. In terms of the man with the yellow jacket, rain jacket, it's a cliche. I mean, it's like I just like wanted to really rely on that cliche, because it's also like a very Istanbul, I think, very typical Istanbul image. You can see this kind of fisherman around with his like yellow coat. So he could be a fisherman from contemporary Istanbul, but I also wanted to have this color as a tracking point in every image, so that when we get lost, because it's kind of like it doesn't have a focus when you have the camera like that. You just like you have to sometimes give it a tracking point, so that the kind of the eye doesn't get lost as if we're looking at this image. So in that sense, it had a very practical use. And it could also be like Komurciyan himself, like who came back and like who was just like walking around the city. I didn't want to necessarily like give it like a certain meaning, but use it sometimes as a color, sometimes as a narrator that could like guide us through the film. And I wanted that to be a little bit of a stereotypical like thing from Istanbul, and I think that's like the image of a fisherman was the only the first image I had in my mind. And also because Komurciyan he spends pages talking about a certain type of fish. He really liked eating and drinking, and so that was kind of like again I think in a way tribute to that love for life.
And also there are some really creative, like textual, I mean, this is my opinion, of course, textual interventions as well to Komurciyan's text. And sometimes I would lose, like, also Zeynep really can write really in his kind of, I don't know, the way Komurciyan can, or it seems like at least, kind of very invisibly blend with his text. So yeah, there are some few moments, in the text, especially towards the end, that I quite like, and it's Zeynep's voice blended with Komurciyan's voice.
Hi, thank you for this movie. I have some questions, but I will try to focus on one. Why is this book called travelogue if Komurciyan is not a traveler? I have another question. Okay, I can't restrict myself to one. As I understand, this person had a specific standpoint in his time, although everyone has a specific standpoint. But you describing him made me think that he had even more specific one. And you're juxtaposing that with the contemporary images of Istanbul. While doing that, did you feel like anything contrasting or not fitting, or like, you know, this very, or the other way around, like really fitting? Did you had those kind of feelings or moments while doing that? Thanks.
Thank you. I'll start with the first one. Like, yeah, that's actually, I think, very good question. Yeah, his book is kind of, especially in the English language, referred as a travelogue. Although in Turkish it's called history. It's called 17. Asırda İstanbul Tarihi. The direct translation would be History of Istanbul in the 17th century. So he's not necessarily calling himself. I mean, that notion is probably also not invented. But also his style of writing, and also because he took him almost like 30 years to write the book. He describes in the book in certain ways like his relationship with Istanbul kind of as a part of a long journey. So maybe that's why, like in academia later on, like these writings refer to his work as a piece of like travel writing, because he also had other like travel books. So that was like, again, like his own peculiarity in that sense that made him a historian, but at the same time a traveler, citizen of Istanbul, but at the same time like who had this like with this outside look. So I think that's why I adapted like the term travelogue, but I don't necessarily refer to him as a traveler. Like I always like kind of try to mention that he's a kind of intellectual from Istanbul who's a translator, who's quite an important figure in the community. But I think he was also like a little bit describing himself, especially in relation to the book, because it was also written to a person who was outside Istanbul, who lived outside Istanbul. Like a kind of like a travel book. He refers to it in like kind of between the lines. And in terms of the contrast, like or sometimes lack thereof, definitely was like the shaping in a way like concept that I had in mind. Because like in certain parts of the town, you go to a particular location and then it's like time froze, you know, it's like everything just is exactly the same way as Komurciyan described it like almost 400 years ago. But then like you go to, for example, like the gardens, like when he talks about like the Yedikule gardens, like these like city gardens, the idea of a city garden was there even back then. But at the same time, I think as much as I was really kind of mesmerized with this fact that some things remained, because we tend to think that everything has changed, but it has not. So I tried to find a balance between those two feelings. So I also like stuck to the contradictions. Like, for example, in Yassıada, at the end of the film, like this beautiful tiny island, like how can you put so much cement like on this amazing place, you know? That's kind of a contradiction where he talks about like how they had fish and they drank and they had, you know, like a merry night. I mean, but the image you look at is a destruction of everything that he basically talks about. So I was trying to also like find my way through these two feelings of kind of persistence and at the same time destruction. Eytan. And maybe we can talk a little bit about like the sound and music editing, because it was a very integral part of the editing for us.
I think the fact that the film is, first of all, I mean, we already talked about the meditative aspect of it, and feeling the texture of the city, and sometimes letting that kind of be, that's kind of the arguments we were having, to what degree. But this was important in the editing, and I think that the fact that the film is so, I don't want to use the word playful, but like kind of, in a way, like very open to different things. It's kind of not like a minimalist kind of, this is the narrow street I'm going to walk from. It wanders in different directions. So that, of course, frees up, gives you a lot of choices, things to do. For example, when we pass by in Taksim, by that wall with all the building projects that is planned, and so there was like kind of, we could playfully put some kind of like kind of bossa nova style, kind of thing, and kind of be ironic there, and also kind of when Cemal Kafadar tells his stories, the story that he tells, we can go into some really expressive use of music in a completely different way. So this was very important for us, I would say. And also with I remember how excited we were about the Women in Doubts section, as it opens with this like kind of this electronic version of a Debussy piece. So it was kind of, because you were doing so many different things, we could really go in many directions, I think. Yeah, which is good.
Also, because Eytan is a direct filmmaker himself, he has a great documentary that he also finished around the same time called The Pageant, he's also a musician. So we were working with musician Erdem Helvacıoğlu, who is kind of like an experimental jazz musician who lives in New York. And so basically, I was describing him a certain mood. He was sending us a piece, but you know, like literally, he was also like a super open-minded person, luckily. Because I remember we would literally sit down, edit music, and you know, sometimes like only use maybe 3 like piano kind of short parts from his music, and kind of ditch the rest, and he was totally fine with that. So in that sense, we also edited music together. There were parts, especially his like prepared pianos, it was really like edited by Eytan on the editing suite, and then like we were trying to.
Yeah, we basically, if I'm not mistaken, we were editing especially a lot. For example, I remember in this Cemal Kafadar section, because I just was able to catch it. Like, you know, there is some like, I don't know, he picks this, I don't know, string or whatever he does, ding, the sound that he gives, and we were like kind of arranging where that could go. So we were really kind of shaping his music around the edit, and the edit around that kind of.
And then I did the sound edit here with an amazing sound designer actually, and he literally on piano recreated the footsteps, because like it was so important for me. Like maybe you don't of course necessarily realize it while you're watching, but like the first time we hear his footsteps is when he comes down to the cemetery. So for me, like it is the first time when like we travel within the cemetery, because we start talking about like a recent like a story from an atrocity from the recent past. This is where we hear his footsteps. So, for me, also like the collaboration in the sound, I think, kind of part of the film was quite important.
Yeah, and I also now remember those interviews. They were also filmed interviews as well. So there was, but we kind of were feeling there was this option always on the table that we could see people talking, but I think very quickly we felt that that was not where we wanted to go. I'm not sure how we made that decision, but it's like it adds to the kind of ghostly quality of the film.
So maybe we say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And we're here. We can talk a little bit more. Thank you so much for hosting us and for watching our film. Thank you, Eytan.
Thank you, Zeynep. Thank you.